To what serves mortal beauty? To what serves mortal beauty? Dangerous. Does dancing blood, seal that so feature-flung prouder form than Purcell tune let's tread to? See, it does this, keeps warm men's wits to the things that are, what good means, where a glance master more than may gaze out of countenance, those lovely lads once wet fresh windfalls of war's storm. How then should Gregory, a father, have gleaned else from swarmed Rome, but God to a nation dealt that day dear chance. To man that needs would worship block or barren stone, our law says, love what are love's worthiest. We're all known. World's loveliest. Men's selves. Self flashes off frame and face. What do then? How meet beauty? Merely meet it, own home at heart, heaven's sweet gift. Then leave, let that alone. Yea, wish that, though, wish all God's better beauty, grace. All right, so this poem obviously is very confusing on a first reading, but like all of Hopkins' other works, you have to kind of work your way through and parse words and lines to get into the deeper meaning of what he's all about. But I would say the key, the question is, what is the purpose of beauty? Immortal beauty, not immortal, not eternal beauty, which is God, beauty, truth, and goodness. But mortal, meaning temporary, fleeting, not lasting. You know, what purpose does it serve in this world? Humans grow and in their journey are attracted to beautiful things, whether they're scenes from nature or people. There must be a reason why we are attracted, what we find in that deep down. So this is another one of his ideas of deep down things. There is an inner beauty reflected in the outer appearance, and all things that are beautiful are a reflection of God's beauty, and that will lead to obtaining grace. Okay, and in the other poem, the poem about the dragonflies draw fire, he tells us grace keeps all our goings going. In other words, it is through grace that we grow in grace too. So, and beauty can lead us to grace. So that's basically what's behind this poem, but we'll have to look at it closely to get there. So to really love someone is to see God in that person, because one's outer self reveals its inner self, or its beauty. Its soul reflects the beauty of God. Beauty in mortal things of this world, however, is perishable, we are told. Nothing gold can stay in Frost's poem, you know, that everything is fleeting, as we see even in Shelley's Mutability. So we should seek imperishable beauty, which is found only in God and the things that God has created in this world. Hopkins characterizes beauty as being something dangerous, all right, seductive and manipulative. It sets our hearts and our blood dancing, okay? And then he raises the question, why? Why does that happen? Why? What is the purpose for that? So he raises this question, what purpose does it serve, the dancing of the blood for mortal beauty? Why does God allow that we pursue mortal beauty, right? So the answer, it says in the poem, and you have to kind of reverse the wording. It says it keeps warm men's wits to the things that are. So it keeps warm the wits of man, okay, to the things that are. It serves to kindle our realization that there is beauty and things of beauty are worth seeking. We're attracted to those things, and it's not something we have to work at. It's just a natural thing. It's one of our pleasant urges that we have in life, to be attracted to beauty. It functions like a seed within us with its own power of allurement, all right, for the things of beauty. In other words, man is attuned to the things reflecting beauty in that he recognizes that they are beautiful, but in a mortal kind of way. We have an affinity for order in all things in our life, and this orderliness lends a sense of beauty, a symmetry. So it's we don't like chaos, all right? We like order. So there's a deep down goodness in things which lend them a beauty, and that beauty is a reflection of the order that God has implanted in things. Beauty shows us what is real and good before the onset of its mortal corruption, that things do corrupt, as we saw in spring and fall with Margaret. She was saddened by the corruption of the leaves, dying, and the loss of that beauty. So that reflects it too. And also in the poem Spring, we had, a poem that reflects the traces of the Garden of Eden, or paradise, a strain on the earth, a taste of what it was like before man was ejected from paradise. So corruption is actually concealed within mortal beauty, and it's a reflection of the immortal, eternal beauty found in God, right? So another line from Hopkins, Hararin, the harvest. It always has been there for the beholder wanting, that this beauty is about us, but we must seek it and enjoy it. We must seek its presence in our lives. All right. So he says, love flashes off these things in life. Flashes off. So beauty is sewn into the fabric of the world. God, in the beginning of Genesis and the creation of the world, we are told that God looked at what he had created and he called it good. So there is a goodness in, things of this world. Our response to the beauty is our care and our reverence for the things that enchant us. When we enjoy beauty, we are participating in the things that God loves. Beauty found in nature and the things of nature reflect the beauty of their creator. So Hopkins speaks of man as God's pride and cared for crown in another poem, The Sea and the Skylark, all right? And he says in that poem that we are the highest of his creation, endowed with, intellect and will, yet he indicts us for the way we treat the environment, all right? And then in the Lantern Out of Doors, we're told that Christ minds, Christ interest, Christ eyes them, heart wants, cares, haunts, foot follows kind, and that he is first, fast, last friend, echoing the biblical allusion. What is man that you are mindful of him? So, we know that God's creation of man is his highest creation, and we are made sons of God. In other words, if humans were fully known with the value imbued in them by their Creator, we'd know just how worthy they are of love. And he goes on in the sestet, talking about, flashes, self-flashes off frame and face. That reminds me of the lantern out of doors. He's looking out and he sees these creatures going by in the night, and that would be an example. Self flashes off frame and face. Now, later we'll discuss the last three lines when he says, "What do then? How meet this beauty? What are we supposed to do about it?" All right. So throughout his works, we are told that a thing's outward beauty is an outward sign of its inner beauty with regard to God's highest creation. All right. So Hopkins tells us that man's beauty flashes off frame and face, meaning that his beauty can be ascertained by his demeanor, the animation of his physical form, and his actions, almost like, we would recognize a piece of music by a few notes. We hear a couple of notes and we can come up with, we know the entire body of that musical composition. So, in a way, he is saying here that self flashes off frame and face, just a gaze. In the octave, he does the same. Master more than my gaze out of countenance, where a glance at someone gives you like an appreciation of that person, of who they truly are as a person, created with a body and soul, and the outward demeanor. The first man. I'm thinking about another poem too, where he refers to mankind growing in grace, just man, justices. So that, means that he's full of grace, and therefore a reflection of his inner spirit, which keeps all his goings graces. So here he's speaking about, beauty, almost like working its way into the grace that man can access by loving his fellow man. So, in that regard, he encourages us to love what are known to be God's loveliest, world's loveliest, not the block or stone or things of art such as sculpture or architecture or canvas, but men's selves being their individuality, their uniqueness, a philosophical point of Scotus's philosophy, that there's a thisness, an individual, a uniqueness to all of creation, including man. So he tells us that self flashes off frame and face. Finally, Hopkins raises the question of how we are to deal with this powerful concept of mortal beauty. What do with it? What do then? He says, how must mortal beauty, how meet it, rather? His answer is a short, imperative reply. He says, merely meet it. Own home at heart, then leave. Let that alone. All right, so that's kind of an abrupt answer. Just leave it alone. What more would one want to do with it? Well, there's an answer to that too. The human condition is to want to possess it for one's own, buy it, whatever the cost. For example, in human relations as well, to possess that person as in a marriage and in a selfish way, selfish relationship, one person would want to control the other, making the individual conform to his own selfish desires, like making him into what he thinks he ought to be like. So stealing that person's identity or that person's selfhood. So Hopkins' reply is just leave it to its own selfhood. Let that alone. So let me see here. Hopkins is suggesting that humans have an innate tendency to want to control or change things to their will and desires, seeking to manipulate and manage things to their concept of what things ought to be like. Hopkins tells us to leave it alone. This concept appears in his environment poems as well, like in Inversnade, where he speaks of the ravishing of the beauty as a consequence of industrial development. We destroy the environment, deforestation, the pollution of the air, and things like that. So it's a destruction of beauty found in the Scottish wilderness in that poem. And this is the way he sums that up, and it relates here. What would the world be once bereft of wet and of wilderness? Let them be left. Oh, let them be left. Wilderness and wet. Long live the weeds in the wilderness yet. So in other words, enjoy the beauty, but leave it alone. Don't destroy it, as in other poems, such as God's Grandeur too. He speaks about the environment, and but this poem speaks more about the theme of loving that which is deserving of love, and that, of course, is our fellow man. Its theme is that the beauty which surrounds us is there only as part of everything else is in this temporal world, for its temporal value, not its eternal or lasting, because it will be gone, all right? Just as we will be gone. So there's nothing that's going to be lasting, as we saw in Nothing Gold Can Stay by Frost. Nature's first green is gold, and so on. So mortal beauty serves a purpose, but it is not the purpose. If we seek mortal beauty as immortal beauty, we will be disillusioned. As we read in the book of Ecclesiastes, God has made everything beautiful in its time. All right, it's not lasting. So it's only by acknowledging the fleeting and mutability of life that we appreciate its glory. So we find that concept in another poem that I use the same quote in. Shelley says, "It is the same, for be it joy or sorrow, man's yesterday may ne'er be his morrow, nor it may endure, but mutability." So what then, as the title asks, is the purpose of beauty? Again, referring to the Kingfisher poem, we told that man acts in God's eyes what in God's eye he is, another Christ, by keeping grace, and that keeps all his goings graces. So that is the highest beauty, of course, the sanctifying grace, which we can acquire through our actions, but they begin, it's like a seed. The beauty is the seed that draws us into that evolvement into grace. So Hopkins encourages us to look for and appreciate beauty, for we know that his mantra is that beauty, it can be found, and it's a manifestation of God's beauty at work in nature. all right, in creation. He also tells us that man innately must find beauty even in a block of stone. But he tells us that God's greatest commandment is to love God above all things and equally his neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself for the love of God. So in the sestet, he tells us to love what are God's worthiest, men's selves. That's the heart of the whole poem right there. Love what is worthiest to love, and that would be men's selves. In what God's eyes, he tells us in Kingfishers, he is another Christ. By keeping all his goings or his good works, he obtains graces, and keeping grace is something better than mortal beauty. Mortal beauty may be used as an instrument to transform us by our love for truth, and that sustaining grace, the power of our finding beauty in God's creation, and especially in the beauty found in the highest of God's creatures, and it will enable us to see God for who he really is. Hence, this love of beauty will enable us to love God. All right, so that's what this poem is about. To what serves mortal beauty, it is a means to an end. It's an instrument to lure us into the things and keeps our wits warm. All right, otherwise we would be jaded by the world about us, as we found in some of his other poems. To what serves mortal beauty, dangerous as it might be, okay, it does dancing blood, so it makes it affects us positively, our emotions, and the seal that seal that so feature, like permanently seal it so we can preserve it and hold on to it. Not so. You can't do that with temporal beauty. Flung prouder form than Purcell's tune that treads to, that you dance to, that music in the dance movement of Purcell, whom he admired highly. See, it does this. It keeps warm men's wits to the things that are. Beauty does. What good means, where a glance master more than may gaze out of countenance those lovely lads once. And of course, here he's referring to St. Gregory and the conversion of England through his having once witnessed young boys who were slaves, fair-skinned, blonde-haired boys, and they moved Gregory in such a way that it led a path to the conversion of England. All right, so that would be a tale that most English schoolboys would know about, but we don't have to get into all those details. But God to a nation dealt that day's dear chance. So in other words, that was something that was providential. St. Gregory had to be there at that moment, witnessing that, and that beauty led him into an action that brought about grace and Christianity in England. To man that needs would worship. So man has a need, an innate need to worship things, whether it be block or stone, and you could see that as granite or marble, chiseled in canvas for painting. Our law says, above all, love what our love's worthiest. We're all known. Okay, everyone knows that, love your neighbor as yourself for the love of God is the highest and worthiest thing that one can do. World's loveliest men's self. All right, that's the highest, the pinnacle of beauty in the world, of creation, is the creation of men's selves, individual selves, again, all right, that individuality. Self flashes off frame and face. A glance will tell you, like a note of music. What do then? Leave it alone. All right? How meet it? Merely meet it and leave it. Heaven's sweet gift. Then leave, let that alone. Yea, wish that, though the highest thing to wish for would be God's grace. Okay? Wish you all God's better beauty, His grace. All right, so it's a bit of a confusing poem, but once again, looking through it word by word and parsing it out, we see that there's a message there, and it's very similar to most of his other works.